Hello everyone, Bach Photography here, back with another behind the scenes video, and this might be the last video for a little while because we're going to be going into lockdown here in my city. So I'll try to post as much content as I can in the near future, but I might be posting a little bit less than regularly. And in this video we're doing one of the classic photo shoots, one that you can do pretty much wherever you live in the world, and that is the photo shoot at a laundromat. And we're shooting about 6 p.m. just as the sun is going down, so we're going to get some photos where the surrounding area is bright and full of natural light, and then at the end of this photo shoot it's going to be dark outside and we're going to only be using the available light inside the building. So let's quickly talk about the equipment I used in this photo shoot. I was using a Sony A7RII mirrorless camera, which is a full frame mirrorless camera, and a Sigma 35mm f1.4. And these are the only pieces of equipment I used for the shooting of the photos in this photo shoot. But I also used a Yongnuo YN300 constant video light at the beginning of the photo shoot, but only for a few of the photos before I turned it off and used just natural light. And for the videography in this video, I used a Canon 5D Mark IV and a Sigma 50mm f1.4 lens. We decided to shoot on this wider lens because I wanted to capture a lot of the background in these photos so you can get a vibe of where we are, and I see all of these really old retro looking washing machines and get a nice sort of retro image. So the outfit was also chosen to suit that kind of theme. We were looking for more of an 80s look with a really bright fluorescent yellow top, and we really think that that complemented the pastel vibe of the laundromat here. You can see I'm positioned shooting down the line to these washing machines, and that's so I can add a bit of depth in the image, because it's always better to shoot where there is some space in the background so that you can add some separation from the foreground to the background and make your image look a little bit more three-dimensional. So that's why in this photo in particular you can see that there's an area in the back which is further away, and I'm not just shooting directly straight on to the washing machines. So now let's have a look at a few of the photos in this location, and then we'll move on to the next part of this photo shoot. In these photos we shot on the 35mm at f1.4, and that's so we could get some background separation and keep Kiara separated from the background, and we're doing that by making the background really blurry and keeping her nice and sharp so there's some contrast in the blurriness there. We're shooting at 1/160th of a second because even though it was daytime, it was starting to get a little bit dark and we needed to slow down our shutter speed to get a nice exposure in the image. And we're shooting at ISO 200 because it was a little bit too dark to shoot at the native ISO of my Sony camera, so we just boosted it up a little bit so that I could get a nice exposure in the image and not have to drop the shutter speed too low and add camera shake into the photos. So the next area we decided to shoot was this couch, which was just at the front of the laundromat. And the reason we shot here is because we still wanted to use as much natural light as possible before the sun went down. And we were right next to a really big window, which provided us with a lot of natural light. So we only took a few photos here before we decided to move on because there was a lot of stuff we wanted to cover, and we only wanted to take a few photos in each area as we moved around. So here are a couple of photos that we took on the couch. You can see that our ISO is slowly creeping up now as the sun goes down, and this is so I can get a nice exposure in my image without reducing the shutter speed too much and adding camera shake into the photo. I like to keep my ISO lower than 640 if possible when shooting portraits, but ideally I want it to be my native ISO, which is 100 on the Sony A7RII. Okay, time for the next location and a wardrobe change as well, and I think this red color is really going to stand out next to these brown washing machines, and that's why we chose this color. We wanted Kiara to really stand out from the image, and we're also going to up the saturation in all these photos so that the laundromat looks really bold and vibrant and retro looking. So at this point of the photo shoot, it is now dark outside and we're relying purely on the lighting in the laundromat to expose our photo. And a quick tip for you if you're using just artificial light inside a room is that you want to have your light to be in front of your model instead of right above, and that is so that you can expose their face correctly and make their face a little bit brighter than the rest of the image, because the face is the most important part of any portrait, and that is the part that you want to be the brightest and draw the most attention. So let's have a look at some of the photos that we got from this part of the photo shoot. And if you've got this far into the video and you're enjoying this content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to this channel. I really appreciate all of you subscribing because it helps me make this a full-time job and produce as much content for you guys as I can. So thank you very much for subscribing. So let me know in the comments which of those 4 photos is your favorite. I think this one here is my favorite because the colors are nice and bold in the background, the posing looks good, but most importantly, I think the lighting from the lights above on the ceiling really flatter Kiara's face here. We were shooting at quite a high ISO of 800 because we were relying purely on the lights inside the building now because it was completely dark outside, and we were shooting at quite a slow shutter speed as well, so I had to make sure that I kept my camera super stable and steady while I was taking the photo. We were shooting again at an aperture of f1.4 because it meant that we could blow out the background, but also it meant that we could have as much light coming into our sensor as possible because this was the lowest ISO possible on my 35mm lens. So now we're going to go into Photoshop and edit this photo, and there's going to be a link in the description to the raw files from this photo shoot if you would like to edit along or if you'd like to edit these photos in your spare time. And thank you to everyone who has been going onto Instagram and sending me your edits of my photos. I really enjoy looking at them, and it's interesting to see how other people edit my work. So thank you very much for doing that. Okay, so here we are in Photoshop, and you can see that the image is looking a little bit flat and a little bit noisy because we're shooting at an ISO of 800. But because we're shooting at a correct exposure, we still have not that much noise in the highlights or the shadows of the image. So we're going to boost the clarity up and also the exposure, and the clarity is mainly because when you're shooting at high ISOs, you lose a bit of that contrast. Then we're going to change the color of the image a bit, drop the highlights slightly as well to recover some of those highlights, and then add some more shadows back in, because the higher the ISO, the less contrast you have in your image, which means you're going to have less shadows and less blacks and that kind of thing. Now we're going to boost all of the colors up to make this image a lot more vibrant, because when you're shooting at high ISOs, you're also going to lose a lot of the color and also have some introduction of color noise in your image. So that's going to be hidden when we boost the colors back up. So next we're going to just add a little bit of exposure and also some clarity into the eyes, and that's mainly to make the eyes pop from the image and attract the viewer's attention as the first thing that the viewer will look at in this photo. And we're going to make the eyes even more, pop even more from the image by making the eyebrows darker, and that's just going to draw even more focus to the eyes. And we're going to do the same thing to the hair. We're going to make the hair a little bit darker because that was the closest area to the light source, which means that it is a little bit brighter than it appeared in real life. So we're just going to go over that left side one more time just to make it a little bit more darker and even compared to the other side. Okay, so now we're going to drop the clarity and drop the blacks and exposure, and this is so we have a masking tool to smooth the skin. And you can see now wherever I click, we can see exactly which area of the skin I've highlighted. And we're going to be smoothing this skin, so basically the clarity slider, when you reduce the clarity, it's going to remove the textures from the skin. And this is a rough way of removing skin in 30 seconds or 45 seconds. It's much quicker than doing dodging and burning and frequency separation. It is a rougher tool, but it is going to do a quick smoothing. In the interest of time, we can do a smoothing very quickly. So I'm going to do the arms here as well, and we're just making sure not to go over any hard lines so that we can keep the detail in the areas that we would like to be detailed, but just removing any of the textures that we don't like from areas that we'd like to be smooth. So we're just going to do the stomach there as well, and that's all of the parts of the skin we're going to smooth. So now we can remove the blacks and exposure changes and just slide that clarity slider to the exact right spot. And sometimes when you reduce the clarity too much, you can lose some of the whites and highlights. So just adding a little bit of those back in makes the skin bright in the areas that are bright. So that's everything for now in Camera Raw. Now let's use the patch tool just to remove any imperfections in the skin. And I'm just going to fast forward this because it's a little bit boring, and in the interest of time, just to keep the video short, I'll see you in a minute after I've removed all the blemishes from the skin. Okay, that's everything for blemish removal, not much to do there. And the skin is looking really nice and smooth. Now I'm going to go back into the camera raw filter and just add a little bit more exposure to Kiara's face, because I really want the face to draw attention of the viewer. And because we only had the available light in the laundromat, we were kind of restricted with how we could use the lighting to advantage. So it's always nice to be able to add some more in Photoshop. Now here I'm using the liquify tool just to add a little bit more volume to the hair, and these are all going to be really subtle changes so we don't warp and distort the background too much to make it obvious, but just adding a little bit more volume to the hair can really make a big difference to any portrait. So a before and after, you can see that that does make a huge difference. So that's almost everything for this photo. I'm just going to remove a few creases from the shirt just to make it look a little bit more presentable. And so there's just a few little creases here and there. I'm going to use the patch tool to remove. And basically I'm also going to use the content aware deletion tool as well, where I just circle an area that I want to remove and then click the delete button. Okay, so the final thing I'm going to do is just separate Kiara from the background even more by adding some artificial blur to the image. So I've just made a selection with the lasso tool, and I'm going to inverse that selection. So now I am selecting everything that isn't the area that I just circled. And I'm going to go filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and just add a couple more pixels of blur to the image. And we're just going to do that a couple more times, and that is everything for this photo. So I really hope you like it, and once again the raw files are going to be in the description if you'd like to edit this in your own time, and thank you for sending me your edits of this photo. I really hope that you liked this photo, and I really enjoyed this photo shoot, and I'm hoping that this lockdown will be lifted soon so we can go out again and do more photo shoots together. All of the equipment I used and more are going to be in the description as well if you'd like to check that out, and also Kiara's Instagram is going to be in the description as well as my Instagram handle as well. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.